All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to Black and Gold Breakdown on a Tuesday, September 17th, after week two. And how about it? The Steelers are 2-0 for the first time since 2020, second time since 2017 that they started off 2-0. And if they start off 3-0, odds are this is going to be a playoff team. Now, things look great right now as is. I think they have like a 75% chance of making the playoffs or something at 2-0 right now if you go to the Football Power Index for ESPN. But they are 2-0, and a big reason why they are 2-0 is because of how great that defense has been. They've allowed one touchdown in 2 games. And another reason is because Justin Fields has played pretty good. Not great, not elite, but he's been solid. And for that reason, they're rolling forward with him as the starting quarterback in week 3, at least. I think the exact wording from Mike Tomlin was they're progressing with Justin until something happens, which kind of indicates he's going to be our starter until he shows us a reason why he shouldn't be. And as of right now, why wouldn't you do it? He played well in the first half against Denver. Second half, the offense didn't look good. They didn't have a drive that was longer than 5 plays. They really leaned on the defense more in the second half. But if you look at the plays that he made in the first half that were negated by penalties, the box score doesn't tell you how good he was. Obviously, he had that 51-yard just rope to George Pickens that could have resulted in at least 3 points and potentially another touchdown. And then he had a second touchdown pass that was negated by an offensive pass interference call on Van Jefferson. So at minimum, I mean, the Steelers left 10 points on the board because of penalties. Obviously, Broderick Jones had a really bad drive with 3 penalties. One of them, his last one, killing that 51-yard bomb from Fields to Pickens. So the 13 of 20, buck 17 and a touchdown don't really tell you how good he was. Because if you factor in the penalties, he goes 15 of 22 for about a buck 80 and 2 touchdowns. And he's added, I think, 87 yards, 84 yards on the ground over 2 games. And in the entirety of the game against Atlanta and in the first half against Denver, Pittsburgh was establishing long drives. Now you look at the game against the Falcons, 13 plays, 12 plays, 10 plays, 10 plays. And then against Denver, they had multiple drives that were double-digit plays, one of them resulting in a touchdown to Darnell Washington, and the other, unfortunately, resulted in a punt because of penalties. Now, Mike Tomlin just said, I should say, he said earlier today during his press conference that they're having referees at practice this week to try to help cut down on these penalties. Because right now, I believe they might be the most penalized team in football right now. I'll have to look at the exact numbers. But they're heavily penalized, and that's really hurt them. And it hurt them in week 1 as well. It was a ticky-tack call on George Pickens in week 1 on the OPI. But regardless, it hurt. But it really hurt them against Denver. Because, again, they could have had 2 additional touchdowns if not for penalties. And so, you take away that field goal at the end of the half to make it 14-0. You add on potentially a touchdown on the long pass to Pickens, or at least a field goal. It's 17-0, 21-0. So, I mean, we're looking at a situation where they could have won 24-6 or 20-6 rather than 13-6. But they dominated the entirety of that game. And defensively, they've been awesome at all levels. And Corey Trice came in, got his first career interception. TJ Watt looks really good. Alex Highsmith had a really good game on Sunday. They're getting good play at all levels. Deshaun Elliott looks like the best signing for them of the offseason. He's been tremendous through 2 games. So they've been good on that side of the ball. Been getting Pat Fryermuth involved in the offense. He had a nice catch in the red zone to set up the Darnell Washington touchdown. So they've been good. And again, it comes back to finishing, which in Atlanta, they had long drives, but just ended up getting field goals. In the first half this week, they looked like they could have had multiple touchdowns. I mean, they did put the ball in the end zone twice. It's just one of them was negated by penalties, and the other potential to put the ball in the end zone was also negated by a penalty. So I don't see a reason to switch off from Justin Fields when he's playing this well. And the offense is moving the ball consistently. Now, again, they got to clean things up from how they played in the second half against Denver. But this is a solid football team, which, a lot of people did not expect them to start 2-0. I certainly thought that the game against Denver was the ultimate trap game, and they could have started off 1-1. But they came through, they won, and now we look forward to Los Angeles, who's also 2-0 under Jim Harbaugh. That run game looks really good, and this is a real big test for Pittsburgh, where, all right, you're going up against a good head coach, a really good quarterback, and an offense right now who I would say somewhat similar to Pittsburgh, like might not be all that flashy. Like against Vegas, they struggled a little bit until the dam finally broke. And they had a long rushing touchdown from J.K. Dobbins. He had another one against Carolina, who they just beat 26-3. And the Panthers are really bad. So for both teams coming off games against lesser opponents, we'll now see kind of the battle of unbeatens in the home opener against the Chargers. And I'm very much looking forward to that game. Second straight East Coast game for the Chargers. Again, they were in Carolina this past Sunday, and now they'll be in Pittsburgh. They did stay in Carolina, so they didn't travel back to Los Angeles, and then they'll be traveling to Pittsburgh. They stayed in Carolina, and then they'll come up to Pittsburgh from there. And it'll be Justin Fields under center. Mike Tomlin also said today that he wasn't concerned about the lack of production from the other receivers. I think that's kind of Mike just saving face, although he hasn't been shy about saying how he feels about other things. So I think he should be concerned about the lack of production. I think Van Jefferson had 2 catches this past week. Again, Calvin Austin only had 1 for the second straight week. Hopefully Roman Wilson gets introduced later on. Hopefully sooner than later, right? Or maybe we'll see them bring somebody else in. And I tweeted this yesterday. I said, hey, call Carolina and send a 5th-round pick in 2026 for Adam Thielen. Yeah, he's older. I think he's 34. But can still be... I mean, if you brought in Adam Thielen right now, he's automatically your second best receiver. Veteran presence in the locker room. Guy who can still play. And it's not as if Carolina's going anywhere. So why not call and at least see if they'd be willing to part ways with him? Because right now, I mean, they got Deontay Johnson, they got Xavier Legette. Why not try to get Adam Thielen? Doesn't mean that they can't continue to go big game hunting for, a Devontae Adams or a Terry McLaurin if and when that becomes a thing. Although Vegas just beat Baltimore. How about that, by the way? The Ravens are 0-2. The Bengals are 0-2. Browns are 1-1. And then the Steelers are 2-0, sitting all alone atop the AFC North. Great stuff. Great stuff all around. You love to see it. And on the next 2 games for the Steelers, I'll say this. I will be very shocked if they start 4-0. I think at best they'll split these next 2. They got the Chargers, and then they go back to Indianapolis where they lost last year. 3rd straight year they're going to Indianapolis. And then we can pull up their schedule real quick just to see what else is in store after that, because I don't remember quite off the top of my head the order. I think after Indy, they got Dallas on Sunday night. Yes, I'm correct. So they got the Chargers, Colts, and Dallas as their next three. And then they go to Vegas in week 6. And then week 7 and 8, they host both New York teams. The Jets on Sunday night, the Giants on Monday night before they go into their bye week. So they have a real opportunity. We talked about it a lot in the preseason. If they can start off hot, then if they drop a game, late in the season, they can afford to do that more because they got off to such a hot start. So if they can start off 3-1 and go into week 5, 3-1 against Dallas, even if they lose to Dallas, they'll play a Raiders team that is beatable, which could get them to 4-2. And even if they split Jets and Giants, you're 5-3 going into the bye. I feel pretty good about that because then you come off the bye and you play Washington, who you should beat. And if you're 6-3 after 9 games, I mean, with how good the Steelers are within the division, we know they're going to beat Baltimore at least once. They've won 7 of the last 8 against the Ravens. So, I mean, I feel like that's 7 wins. They should handle the Browns at least once. So that's 8. And then you got Philadelphia, Kansas City sprinkled in there. I'll tell you this. I think they can beat Philadelphia. Philadelphia has shown in 2 consecutive weeks they could very easily beat 0-2 right now. Bad game management. Week 1, bad decision making by Jalen Hurts. He threw 2 bad interceptions. And then last night against Atlanta, Kirk Cousins had the easiest game-winning drive I've ever seen in my life. He throws pass to Kyle Pitts, pass to Darnell Mooney, pass to Drake London, incomplete pass to Ray McLeod, touchdown pass to Drake London. Pretty simple. Do you think Herbert plays after injuring his ankle in practice? Yeah, Herbert's going to play. I highly doubt Herbert's going to miss anything. He'll be fine. I think this is more... He had an injured foot during the preseason. I think that Herbert's fine. Pulling it up right now just to see the more detailed stuff on it. Yeah, I'm not seeing too much on it right now. Yeah, Herbert, he'll play. I don't think it's anything serious. If anything, they're probably just giving him a veteran day rest. A lot of teams do that with quarterbacks. So, if anything, I mean, they can classify it as the ankle, but he's fine. He'll play. People will be talking about it much, much more if there was any doubt that he'd be playing. So he'll be in there. And so, again, if they can start off 3-0, I feel great. Even if they lose and they bounce back and beat the Colts, I'll feel great about it. I don't think they're starting 4-0. I hope I'm wrong. And this defense is good enough where, I wrote about it the other day. I think this is the best defense they've had since 2010. I think it's better than the 2019 unit. I think overall they are as deep as they've been in 15 years. That 2010 unit was a continuation of how good that 2000s unit was. From 2004 to 2010, best defense in football consistently. I think 2010 was probably the last great year. But this defense is awesome. And obviously you want to see the offense do more. And I think the offense is going to do more. And again, we saw them do more against Denver. It's just a lot of it got negated because of penalties. If the play from Fields to Pickens, 51 yards downfield stands, they get at least another field goal. And then the George Pickens touchdown that was taken away because of an OPI. So, I mean, that's at least 10 more points. These 10 points that were left on the board because of penalties. Perhaps 14. So, if not for the penalties, we're talking about the Steelers winning 24-6. And then we're having a little bit different attitude right now about how Justin Fields played. And I think most people, Steelers fans who watch the game, like recognize, okay, yeah, he was better than the box score showed. He wasn't awful, according to the box scores, 13 to 20, a buck 17 and a touchdown. But if you make it 15 to 22 for like a buck 80 and 2 touchdowns, that looks a lot better. And the people who didn't watch the game, who just look at the box score, say, oh, Justin Fields didn't play well. No, he made some throws. He's made multiple throws over the first 2 weeks that say, okay, like they can run this offense with him. And I think the Steelers recognize that too. And this whole Russ thing has been weird. And I'm just going to throw something out there. Maybe, and this is just pure speculation of me putting on my tinfoil hat, but maybe the Steelers kind of planned this. Okay, we'll name Russ the starter, but we'll say the calf is bothering him so we can see Justin play. And then if Justin Fields doesn't play well in week 1 and we lose, then we'll just kind of say, oh, yeah, Russ is feeling better. We'll play him week 2. But the Steelers won week 1. Okay, well, we're going to play it safe. We don't want Russ to get any more hurt. We'll play Justin week 2. Oh, we won again? We're going to keep playing Justin. I think a lot of this was to have the best of both worlds. Okay, you can name Russell Wilson the starter, but also see Justin Fields play. And then if he keeps playing well, you can just say, look, we named Russ the starter, but there's no reason to turn away from Justin. I think that was kind of the idea here. I'm not, and look, again, just wearing my tinfoil hat. But it's very strange to me that Russell Wilson, who was dealing with the calf at the beginning of training camp, they said it was nothing. They said that they were holding him out because of a precaution. But then he plays both of the final preseason games. And then all of a sudden he can't play week 1. That's a little bit weird to me. So that's just my tinfoil hat thing. Take it for what you will. Again, none of that is confirmed at all. Again, this is just me with my theory. But regardless, Justin Fields is playing well, which is very good for Steelers fans. Very good for the Steelers. And if he continues playing well, no reason to stop playing him. Keep him in there. Keep letting him play well. And see where it can take you. I think the offense was gassed second half of the Denver game. The whole team looked exhausted. I mean, maybe if you want to chalk it up to like the high elevation in Denver, I would listen to that argument. I think a lot of it was just they didn't play well. I think also Denver executed. They made some schematic changes defensively that, their defense did a good job. But at the same time, like, penalties didn't help the Steelers in the second half either, because they had there was a third down. I think it was third and like 7 or 8, where they sent a ton of pressure at Justin Fields. He hit Calvin Austin, who was coming over the middle, and Calvin Austin got a first down. But it was called back because Dan Moore held. And instead of risking anything and throwing the ball downfield, they just handed the ball to Jalen Warren and they punted. So like little stuff like that, like again, it'll come up as like a either 3-and-out or 5-play drive. I can't remember which one that was. But stuff like that like negates things and makes you look worse than what it really was. So I think the first half, the offense looked really good. And then Denver made adjustments. Steelers didn't necessarily counterpunch those adjustments too well. But again, they could have had an extended drive if not for more penalties. They had 10 penalties in that game. There was more, but multiple times penalties offset. So I think they actually had 12 or 13. Can't do that long term. That ain't going to get you anywhere. But I very much have enjoyed watching them over the last 2 weeks. And, seeing Corey Trice come along, getting his first career interception after all that he's been through is tremendous. Joey Porter played another really good game. Deshaun Elliott, I know I talked about him, right? He's been awesome. Had an interception week 1. He had a great tackle for loss on third down where he punched the gap and had a tackle for loss to force a punt. He's been really good in coverage. Like Deshaun Elliott has been, I know that Patrick Queen's the one that got a lot of the attention. I think Deshaun Elliott's been their best pickup through 2 weeks. He's been great. Cam Hayward's playing well. Keanu Benton's playing well. Troy Fautanu played well when he got in against Denver. And by the way, they released the depth chart going into week 3. It's Dan Moore and Troy Fautanu as the starting tackles after Broderick played horrible. And I've been pretty vocal about, like, look, he's been kind of at a disadvantage because it's not as if the coaching has helped him too much. They've moved him around a lot, and that certainly hasn't helped his development. But there's no excuse for a false start and 2 holding penalties. Doesn't matter what side of the line you're playing on. Like, you can't do that. So, not great. Time to GP is one of the best throws I've seen in a long time from a quarterback in black and gold. It's one of the best. Like, I'm not just saying this to say it. It's not hyperbole to me. One of the best throws I've seen. Just period. Running to his right, torquing his body and throwing it on a rope and hitting Pickens directly where it needed to hit Pickens for a catch while he was probably being interfered with. Like, bro, it doesn't get much better than that. Jared Bailey, good evening. How's it going? I'm a Chicago Bears fan and have wished Justin Fields nothing but the best since he was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the spring of 2020. Yeah, man. DB has said a lot on his channel, and he's tweeted about it a lot, saying that, like, dude, a ton of Bears fans have, like, flocked to my channel to say just good things about Justin Fields. And that seems to be the most popular thing right now for Bears fans is like, yeah, we hope Justin does well, which is really nice. It's really sweet. So far, he's been really solid. Just overall, in my brief discussions with him in the offseason when I was at the facility, seems like a good dude and a guy that came here and wanted to win, which I have nothing but respect for Justin. And he's played well through 2 weeks. I hope he continues to play well. I hope that he proves to be the long-term answer for the Steelers. Best case scenario is Pittsburgh feels comfortable going into 2025 with Justin Fields. That's best case scenario. And I hope that that is what happens. Now, I hope they win 11, 12 games. He plays well. Maybe they win a playoff game with him. That would be great. Is Deshaun Elliott one of the most underrated signings of any team this season? He could be. Yeah. I mean, it was an under the radar signing from Miami. Yeah, you could definitely chalk that up as one of the more underrated signings. I'm trying to think of anybody else that would really that would qualify for that. But he's definitely on the list of guys that got signed to a new team, kind of flying under the radar. Yeah, for sure. Just tuning in now. I want to know your thoughts on Justin Fields. How long do you think it'll last? As long as he keeps playing well, there's no reason why they'll take him out. As long as he keeps playing well, I don't see them taking him out. And I think going into all of this, they were hoping that they could find a way to play him, which, again, kind of where my little tinfoil hat theory comes in, where they can, okay, we'll name Russ the starter, but we're going to be very, very, very cautious about his calf and make sure that Justin plays week 1 and hope that he plays well so we don't have to take him out week 2. And then we hope that he plays well so we don't have to take him out for week 3. Like, it seems like the Steelers really, really, really want to find out if Justin Fields is the long-term answer. So hopefully he is. Notice a Jeff Hardy action figure in the background just now, pro wrestling fan as well. Yeah, Jeff Hardy is, my favorite wrestler ever. So always keep that there. Yeah, big Jeff Hardy guy. So yeah, pro wrestling's the best. Outside of football, definitely like one of my favorite things. I love wrestling. It's great stuff. Great stuff. Oop. But I'm excited to see what Fields can do in week 2. Chargers defense has actually been, now granted, they've played a Raiders offense that hasn't shown to be all that great, but again, they just mounted a fourth quarter comeback where they were down 10 and beat the Ravens. Now, I would also like to point out, I've said all offseason that the Ravens are incredibly overrated, and then they start off 0-2. So maybe I was just onto something. That said, I don't think the Raiders offense is like incredible all of a sudden. They did enough to get the job done. Devontae Adams is incredible. But even last year when he ate up the Steelers secondary, they still won. So even if Devontae has a game against Pittsburgh, they're going to need more than that to beat the Steelers. So we'll see. And then when it comes down to the Panthers are horrible. So I'm not surprised at all that a Jim Harbaugh-led team with the guys that they still have on defense, because remember, they still have a talented core of guys on defense with Mack and Bosa and Derwin James, Asante Samuel. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I've watched every second of every Chargers game, so I don't know if all of those guys were playing. But when healthy, they have a really good collection of defensive stars. And so I wasn't terribly surprised to see them hold the Panthers to just a field goal, because the Panthers are awful. Yeah, Panthers are terrible, man. Like, that is a bad football team. That is a horrible football team. Now, Andy Dalton's going to start for the Panthers, by the way. So, how about that? But as things look right now, man, like, Steelers, like, especially look at the Ravens schedule coming up. They got the Cowboys and then the Bills. I don't think they're winning both those games. We could very well see the Baltimore Ravens start 0-4. Now, I will cross my fingers. I will pray to whatever God makes that happen, because that would be great as a Steelers fan. And if they do, then that is quite the hole to have to dig out of, especially when they historically don't play the Steelers well. So I feel confident about the Steelers being able to outlast them in the division. And the Browns beat a Jaguars team that looks like they're going to be looking for a new head coach during the offseason. I just feel like they have the quarterback. I know that Trevor didn't play necessarily well, but I think a lot of that is on the coaching. Their defense has played great. They haven't allowed more than 20 points so far this season. Their offense has been what's kind of killing them. And even then, against Miami, if Travis Etienne doesn't fumble on the goal line, they probably beat Miami, and we're talking about Jacksonville being 1-1 instead of 0-2. So, like, Cleveland is a good defensive team. They have a bad quarterback who's not a good dude. I think all of that stuff is really going to loom over them, especially with every loss. We're going to talk about how awful Deshaun Watson is and if the Browns can get out of that contract. So the Browns are beatable. I think the Steelers will beat them at least once. They've seemed to have split pretty consistently over the past few years. Like, the Browns have beaten the Steelers more than the Ravens have, rather handedly, over the past couple seasons. Cincinnati, we'll see. Steelers beat them twice last year, but Joe Burrow didn't play. I know that a lot's been made of the Bengals 0-2 start. They didn't play well in week 1, but they never play well in week 1. Doesn't matter who they play. And then week 2, they look like the Bengals of old and play well against Kansas City. Probably should have beat Kansas City. So the Bengals still worry me because they start off slow every year. They started off 0-2 the year after they went to the Super Bowl and made it back to the AFC Championship game. So I'm still worried about the Bengals. And if I had to guess, they'll still be the team that wins the division. The Bengals are really the only team in the division that I'm like scared of. Baltimore doesn't scare me. Cleveland doesn't scare me. The Bengals I'm worried about. Do you blame Bryce Young or the Panthers as a whole? It made no sense trading CMC and DJ Moore just to then draft a rookie quarterback. Yeah, I blame the Panthers organization's a dumpster fire, and David Tepper's probably the worst owner in the NFL. But Bryce Young also just isn't equipped to be a franchise guy. He's very small, he's very slim, and just doesn't seem to have the tools that it takes to be a franchise quarterback. Now we can talk about, like, Kyler Murray's not very tall, but he's also thicker and can move around a lot more than Bryce Young can. Kyler Murray, by the way, looks great. So I just think that a combination of organizational ineptitude combined with Bryce Young just not being able to translate his college game to the NFL is that all kind of got wrapped into one really ugly situation. So I don't think that Bryce Young is – I think Bryce Young is a guy that has to have everything absolutely perfect around him and in the perfect offense to have any chance of succeeding. If he was the Dolphins quarterback, he might have a shot because that is a very like down to, how do I want to word this? That's a team that has an offense that's based off timing. It's 1, 2, 3, throw the ball to a window. 1, 2, 3, just be a point guard, distribute the ball to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. Occasionally, we'll need to make a little bit longer of a throw. But an offense like that, I think, is kind of his only hope of succeeding in the NFL. Not one where he has to run around and create and do stuff off platform, because I mean he's not been good. If you put him in a situation like Tua, he can have regular season success, but even then, that has a hard ceiling on it. So I don't think that he's ever going to be a guy that is going to be a franchise quarterback. He's not a guy that you win playoff games with. He might be a guy that you can be a middling team with and maybe sneak into the wild card at very best, but I don't think he's a guy that, becomes a franchise quarterback. I think that that's very much done. And I feel bad for Bryce, but at the same time, like, not everybody is going to be a star. And some guys, their college game just don't translate and transfer to the NFL. It's just how it is. It's just how it is. But all right. Good half hour today. Again, we'll have the preview show on Friday. In terms of the pump fake, you can go watch the latest episode on this channel with Jason Fitz, recapping everything from week 2 Sunday. And then on Thursday, Mike K, my friend from the Charlotte Observer, will be joining me to talk about the Bryce Young situation. And then we'll preview week 3 in the NFL. So that'll be a good time with Mike K. Haven't talked to Mike K in a while. I love Mike K. One of my absolute favorite people in the industry. Every time I see him at the Combine or in Indy for the Senior Bowl or the Combine, I always love seeing Mike K. He's tremendous. So tune in on Thursday for the pump fake to see my conversation with Mike K of the Charlotte Observer, talking about the entire mishandling of Bryce Young. Personally, I think Roethlisberger said it best. Takes 3-4 years to evaluate a rookie quarterback. Maybe back then. Not quite anymore. Which is why, like, I think that when we talk about, like, when you see like these older, like Brady talks about it a lot with like his development and how, it took him a long time to, get developed in college and then get developed in New England for his first year. Like, sure, but it's also a very different upbringing for players today than it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, they're expected to be ready sooner because they have a lot more stuff that they do throughout high school and college to get them ready sooner. They've got all these 7-on-7s throughout the year. They got a bunch of camps, these quarterback camps that they all go to all the time. Like, the quarterback's the most important position in sports, and it started getting treated as such over the last like decade and a half or so for high school and college quarterbacks, specifically high school quarterbacks. Like, now we're talking about guys like we've heard about Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud since they were in high school. And Spencer Rattler, they had the Netflix show QB1 that Spencer Rattler was on. Like, they have much more access to stuff to make them more pro ready than they did when Brady was coming into the league or going into college, than they did when Ben was going into college. Like, it's a different game than it was 20 years ago. Now, I will say, you shouldn't give up on a quarterback after 1 year. I do agree with that. However, there are exceptions to that rule. You can tell pretty early on if there's signs of a guy being good. And even then, even when a guy does show flashes, like, if there's plenty of other bad stuff that heavily outweighs the little flashes, then you can tell, okay, this guy's not going to be the answer long term. I said it for 2 years with Kenny Pickett. Okay, the guy was in college for 5 years, was good for one of them in the worst conference of the Power 5 conferences, in a year where that conference wasn't very good, and all of a sudden he's like this savior and worthy of a first-round pick? No. So, yeah, it takes time. and deserves more than 1 year. But at the same time, you can also tell with guys pretty early on, at least some of them, if they're going to be great or not. Like CJ Stroud, yeah, you can tell he's great. You don't need to see another year of CJ Stroud being great to know that he's great. And by the way, he's already having another great start to a season. Like sometimes you can just tell. Jordan Love, last year was his first year as a starter. He was great, and he's continuing to be great. Now, with the Jordan Love thing, that was his fourth. Last year was his third year in the league, fourth year in the league, because he had to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. That's kind of a different situation. But his first year as a starter, you could tell right away, okay, yeah, this guy's good. And with some of these guys, you can look at him and say, oh, yeah, he's bad. We're in year 6 of Daniel Jones because the Giants are too dumb to just bite the bullet and say, yeah, he's not good. And instead of just realizing, okay, this year that we made it to the playoffs was largely because of Saquon Barkley, they gave Daniel Jones $40 million a year, which was stupid. They should have just said, all right, thanks, Daniel, but we just don't think you're going to get any better than this. And would you look at that? He hasn't. So every case is different, but if you're waiting 3 or 4 years for a guy to become good, you can't do that in the NFL anymore. In the NFL now, you get 2. You get your rookie year to kind of feel things out, especially if you start week 1, which is why I'm a little confused as to why the Patriots are waiting with Drake May. Like, just play him. Kind of a trial by fire anymore in the NFL. So, and anymore you get 2. You got your rookie year to kind of be a rookie and figure stuff out, make mistakes. Your team doesn't have any high expectations. They just need you to develop and figure stuff out, figure out how to read coverages, figure out how to see defenses, get comfortable in the offense, etc. And then by year 2, we need to see some growth. And if we see growth, even if we're not a playoff team, hey, we can at least say, all right, he's getting better. And we can go into next season and then have the expectations of, okay, in year 3, we can lean on you a little bit more. We'll put a little bit more pieces around you. We need to at least be, in the playoff picture. And then if by year 3 there isn't much development there, then you really got to say, all right, we gave this thing 3 years and where have we gone? Because if you don't do that, then you end up like the Giants. And you don't want to end up like the Giants. So, again, every case is different, but that's just how I see it. Everybody wanted the Burrow magic with, yeah, they sure did. And that did not work. He's just bad. He's the third best quarterback on the Eagles right now. So that tells you all you need to know about Kenny Pickett. Unless you're the Bears. Yeah, the Bears are also very bad at developing quarterbacks. I will say this, though. They did a lot this past offseason to try to get as many pieces around Caleb Williams. Unfortunately, Keenan Allen's just hurt right now. Their defense is good, though. So, if Keenan Allen wasn't hurt, then you could look at their group of receivers and say, yeah, this is, a really solid core. But unfortunately, Keenan Allen's hurt. And Caleb Williams, again, he's struggling early. That's fine. Again, I don't think the Bears had Super Bowl aspirations this year. You drafted a guy first overall to be the future of your franchise. So he's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be perfect. He wasn't going to throw for 400 yards every game right off the bat. Yeah, against Houston especially, he made the second interception that he threw to Kamari Lassiter was an ugly throw. Shouldn't have thrown it. Threw it practically into triple coverage. The first one that he threw to Derek Stingley, just really good coverage by Derek Stingley. Can't really do anything about that. So I'm not worried about Caleb too much. That's not to say that I think he's going to be a superstar. I think that he'll be a starter long term. I think that Drake May is going to be the best quarterback out of that bunch. But I think that Caleb will be fine. I think that Drake May will be fine. I think everybody else in that class is J.J. McCarthy, maybe just because he's in a really good spot. I think he'll probably have that Brock Purdy tier. I don't think Michael Penix is going to be very good. But we'll see. Think Bryce Young gets traded? Absolutely. 1 trillion bajillion %. You can't bench a guy. I remember when The Giants first drafted Eli Manning. Kurt Warner told Tom Coughlin, he's like, hey, if you pull me and you put Eli in, you can't put me back in because that's going to destroy his confidence. So if you're going to play him, then you got to play him. You cannot go back to me. And they didn't. And it worked out pretty well for the Giants, who got 2 Super Bowls out of it. So, no, the Panthers can't just all of a sudden go back to Bryce Young. So it's just a matter of when and where he gets traded. I don't think it's a matter of if. So, but regardless, good overall conversation today. We'll be back Friday to preview week 3 for the Steelers against the Chargers. So that'll be the Black and Gold show. Black and Gold breakdown on Friday to preview week 3 for the Steelers and Chargers. And then on Thursday, me and Mike Kay from the Charlotte Observer talking about the situation in Carolina, as well as an overall preview for week 3 in the NFL. It'll be a good time. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Almost at 1,300. So help get me there. And if you want to listen to the Pump Fake as a podcast, you can listen to that wherever you get your podcasts. But remember, the Black and Gold Breakdown is the YouTube-only show. So be sure to tune in on Friday for the Week 3 preview. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.